Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mental TV. My name is Sarah, and today we are talking to the legendary Michael DeBar. But before we do, make sure you are subscribed to MetalNet TV and make sure you hit that little notification bell so you are alerted to every cool interview. Here we go. Hi, Michael. Welcome to MetalNet TV.
I'm delighted to be in your presence, my dear.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on. When I was preparing for this interview, I was like, there's so many angles, right? Because you have this incredible career as an actor, as a musician, as an artist, as a DJ, and you've just done so many things. I also think you're very stylish, so you'll have to forgive me if I ask you quite a few questions about personal style and how you got there, because
That's all I care about.
I know, right? That's all I care about too.
The perfect pair of trousers and a fantastic jacket and the appropriate shades and perhaps one earring, depending on. We're going to London with, Mike Chapman. You know Mike Chapman, the
Yes,
producer?
yes, of course.
Brilliant man. I wrote that song Obsession, with Holly Knight.
Yes,
And
yes.
Mike Chapman, fantastic producer. He's getting married. So we've
Oh,
been looking at outfits for the last 2 months
I love that.
to go and be at his wedding in London. So yeah, clothes are so important. They really are. You can't make them look important. They have to look, perfect and yours, and you look great in them. But
Yeah.
I think clothes are everything.
I do too, and I hate to say this, but I've fallen into that pit of, getting really comfortable, especially when we were home all the time. And I really hate it. I'm not a fan of it at all. I'm a fan of being comfortable, don't get me wrong. But I really miss when I used to get jazzed up. Did you ever go through a moment where you didn't dress your best every single day, or have you always just put the effort in?
I wear a velvet suit while sleeping.
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know,
So
I
that's
think that it says so much. I don't know any iconic artists that didn't. I mean, you had James Dean and you
Mhm.
had Elvis in the jumpsuit and all of that. And I think there's a reason for that,
Yeah.
that you believe that that's the best way you look. Now, of course, there's a whole other, chapter of rock and roll that people, like Neil Young looks like
Mhm.
the guy doing the gardening, and then he sings these songs that are absolute poems, brilliance. But I think the most important thing is fun.
Yes. Yes.
Is have fun on all levels. I mean, I've done this because I like it.
You're right. Right.
It's and in many ways I have to do it.
Hmm.
There's something inside me that says you've got to. And I don't think about I got to write the greatest song. I want to write a song that I like,
Right.
or do a show. And on the radio for 11 years, 3 hours a day with Stevie Van Zandt has taught me an awful lot about others
Mm.
because I'm listening to other people's music. I'm not focused and concentrated on myself. Well, of course I am, on weekends. But predominantly, it's about loving the arts and appreciating others. I think is very important. And then
I
I
love
do
that.
believe you have to have a 30-inch waist to really get away with it.
Well, that doesn't hurt. Well, we're going to talk more about everything you just shared with us because you have this really incredible career. But I wanted to start off with probably something that you get asked a lot, and I know you talked about it in your wonderful documentary. But you come from this family that was titled, and you and your son also have this title. And as an American, I'm always fascinated by this, but I really have no understanding. What does a marquee mean to you in your life in today's world?
A nightclub.
Being a marquee.
A
Nightclub?
nightclub. Yeah, well, no, the Marquis in
Oh,
LA. No, it's from there, centuries. 27 Marquis there have been, and I am the 27th, and my son would be the 28th. But it's the same of any kind of country that's been around a long time.
mhm.
You can't have marquees in New Orleans, or New York. It's such an old generational vibe. And the class system in London, which I abhor, by the way,
Right,
the upper and middle and lower class. Give
right.
me a break. There should be a band called the lower class. But there it was. It was laying on me, this thing, and I never knew my parents, as perhaps
Yes.
because I was shuffled off to being nursed by my mother's friends. It's a long story. I don't even know if you know about it, but
I
it's
do actually. I'm going to ask you a little bit, but you have such a rich history that I think if we delved too far into any of it, we wouldn't really get to where we are now. And you do have new music that I would love to talk about as well as your show. But I did wonder if my understanding is that you've never really used the title. Like we know about it, like it's part of your lore. But that I guess is it fair to say that you've sort of rejected it and it's more of a like fun fact about you?
I don't think it's a fun fact. I think in many I really don't concentrate on it. But what I do love about it is the history of one's family, and how that happened. But in terms of classing yourself of where are you, is awful. I believe that we're all Marquis, and we can
Right.
all be, knighted, you know, because there's such a division in the world. And I don't want to be part of that division. I want to be, I want to be a family. I really do mean this. And when I was a kid and I wanted to act, I wanted to be in a community
Mhm.
of actors that could really act and be real about it. And I think it's very difficult to be have a sort of a title. I mean, just the
Right,
word title annoys
right.
me. you know, so it's been an amazing thing to get into the history of it. It really is astonishing. Battles and duels and all of the things that are absolutely operatic you can go through. But really, I just want to listen to Sonny Boy Williams.
Got you. So just to touch on your childhood a little bit, it doesn't strike me as the happiest of childhoods. You had a mom who wasn't able to be around. You had a father who was quite wealthy apparently, and the one thing that I think he did for you that I assume is a good thing is that he was able to pay for your schooling before he lost all of his wealth and ended up in jail.
Yeah.
Um, and so it sounds like a very tough childhood. And you just mentioned also that your mother's friends kind of looked after you before you went to boarding school at, I believe, the age of 8. Um, in those years, I believe it was those years that you had said that your mom was the one that introduced you to music. And I would imagine being around her friends. Oh, she was a showgirl, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
that's the nice.
Polite.
I
Okay.
think your audience can understand that.
Yes. So when you were around her friends and when she introduced you to music, I would imagine that that would have quite an influence on anybody, especially a young child and a young boy. Do you feel that that heavily influenced you to all the things that you would be attracted to later, like being a musician, being an artist, being an actor? Or was that just a part of your childhood and you maybe discovered those passions later?
I think that's the greatest question I've ever been asked,
Oh,
to tell you the truth. That's a beautiful question. I love you for that. I mean that. I've got tears in my eyes thinking about that. Of course, I wanted to be on stage. I was raised by strippers.
yeah.
I was raised by prostitutes, and I was a marquis. It's all been so incredibly. When they say there's a B side of a record, I say both sides are A sides. And so living with them, seeing what they went through in terms of theatrics, and then going from there into the most strict conservative schools filled with knighthoods children, and all of that stuff was such an amazing thing. And I think what happened was I started to make different characters up so I could survive
Mm,
because I never went home in the holidays. I had to stay in the schools because my father was in jail, my mother was in a loony bin, and I had to really, learn to live on my own, even though I was surrounded by hypocrisy and politics and upper class world. I wanted to be in the gutter with a guitar.
Michael, was that something that I don't want to use the word easy to make it sound like you didn't have to put your heart and soul into it, but was surviving and creating these characters something that came a little bit easier to because I think we're all born with a certain kind of personality. Was it something that came easier to you, or was it something that you had to learn and test and try different things to figure out how to fit in with one group versus another? Because you've
I
been
was doing all that, but I didn't know I was doing all of that.
okay.
I mean, when you're in that situation, you innately learn how to deal with what is in front of you. And if what is in front of you is complex and stuff, you better get it together. Otherwise, you're going to be just thrown out the window. And I knew, okay, I've got to really deal with this. I've got to but these girls, these wonderful women, I mean, it's so difficult to describe because I had a chorus of teachers,
Mhm,
in a G string.
mhm.
Can you imagine that? And I'm
I can't. I think
five.
that's really shocking when you're quite so young and you
Yeah,
haven't figured out
5 years,
what.
whatever. And so there was nothing in my world or ever has been anything that is, exhibitionistic or, sexuality. All of that was happening when I was preteen,
Right.
and then I go to the school and I'm 8 years old and it's completely the opposite of that. Now it's a conservatism and the hypocrisy of upper class nonsense while I'd been dealing with working class strippers. I
Right.
went from that into, this other very uptight, homoerotic bullshit from these teachers and stuff. I mean, the story of my life is based on sexuality and Chuck Berry.
Yeah. I believe it. Michael, were you aware when you before you went to boarding school, when you were still with your mother, her friends, were you aware that your childhood was not, let's say, typical of the average child, or was that just so normal to you that you thought that was just life, how life was?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing that happened to me, though, because I was with these ladies and stuff, I went all around England.
Mhm.
I was never in one place,
Okay.
which was fantastic because when you get attached to something, it's like you're tied to a tree. And
Mhm.
that's what happens, I think, to all, other youngins that went to these schools. I had a certain liberation, freedom in my heart, you know, that really saved my life in many
Mhm.
ways, traveling the country and all of that. But it's an extraordinary situation to find yourself because you've got to be creative.
Mhm.
And it's so funny, isn't it, that I became an actor because I've been acting. It's all an act. One's life is just one enormous play
Yeah.
or movie. I've learned to understand that that's nonsense, by the way, because I became very early on a student of Krishnamurti, who was obviously a very wise man. And I read a lot about him. Even preteen, I was reading books on sociology and, all of the great, especially like the Roman, right, brilliant Romans. That era I adored. And I learned a lot from that too. Art and spirituality seem to go hand in hand.
Mm. Michael, you mentioned that you had traveled a bit with all of these women, and then all of a sudden you're in boarding school, and unlike most of the children, you didn't get to go home during the holidays. Did you feel that sense of being tied, and did you ever want to run, or did you understand that this is it for me for right now?
Well, it's all I knew, so I didn't know there was any other ways. Really, I would say that to answer the question, I was never jealous of what the others had
Okay.
because I was living in these really extraordinary buildings of these public schools. They're beautiful, and the library. So I was fine. I just read a lot, and ran around. And I was dealing with the people that were taking care of the school in terms of the kitchens and the this and the that. And they were my friends. All the people that are cleaning up after the rich ones.
Mhm.
And that's why I sort of embraced that world, of working class people, because I've always considered myself a working class rock and roll musician and actor, and now a painter.
And now a painter, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, you noted that, and I think this may have even been in your documentary or some other place where you shared about your life, that you went from being surrounded by G-strings to being fitted for a suit. Did you have any sort of reaction? You must have to being fitted for a suit, which I imagine you probably wore every day
Oh,
in your
I
boarding.
loved it. I love the
Did
clothes.
you?
I mean, well,
Okay.
yes, of course. I mean, the only problem with that when I was very, very young was shorts. I didn't
Oh,
think shorts were sexy at all.
yeah.
But I had to wear them. But when I got into the little older, 13 years old, we had white collars, stiff white collars, and the tie and the jackets perfectly thick. And I thought that was fantastic. That was one of the greatest things about it was the uniforms. Because I
Okay.
wanted a uniform. I wanted to be in some army. I wanted to be part of something, you
Okay.
know. And but I was an avid reader, and that was good because I read lots of spiritual work and sexy romantic books and crazy about the poets, with beautiful coats and horses, things like
Yeah.
that.
I was surprised to hear that answer because even though you know how to wear a suit and a jacket and that, but I would think a lot of us associate suits with that whole suit and tie thing versus being more expressive. So I am surprised to hear that you thought, this is
I
fabulous.
loved it. I loved it because you
Yeah,
must recall that it was the first. It was the first uniform, part of something that I ever. That uniform was I was part of something,
long.
so I wasn't alone. I
Yeah.
was there. I had wore those clothes and all of that. But I left 2 years. I ran away. At 16, and I ran to London. I just came to London, and my shall we say that my uniform changed.
Ah. What did you immediately gravitate to when you moved to London? What
Black leather trousers
black leather. Okay.
and velvet and satin and scarves and earrings and mascara and high heel shoes.
And were these things that you were seeing and going, I want that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because what happened was I left, I ran away, 16, London. I got a job at the Old Vic Shakespearean Theatre in the props department. And I remember Ian Holm playing Richard III, Shakespeare, and I just went, wow. I think I'd like to do that too. So I went to drama school, and then I was in drama school at Corona Academy, where Stevie Marriott and a lot of youngins like that, before they became rock and roll musicians, they were young actors, and I got to Sell with Love. The producers and directors of that movie came to our acting academy, and we'd had to do a vibe for them, and I got the gig, and it's been like that ever since.
Did you realize what a big deal it was to be cast in a movie and
No,
especially to Sir with Love, which ended up being one of like the greatest films of all time that everybody
yeah,
knows
top
about?
10, top 10 movies.
Yeah.
But I no, I thought it was good.
You just thought it was cool. Like you had a cool
I
opportunity to do something.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never been scared of that stuff. The things that scare me now is what's happening. But
Right.
then I was pretty fearless because I'd been through a lot of stuff in these schools. I was badly treated by these sick 15-year-old kids that thought they were, really were knighted, and I hated all of that. And I was looked upon as a sort of a strange fellow. And I never cared about that, what people thought of me, which I think is a really good suit of armor when you go into theatrics and rock and roll and anybody. You cannot allow yourself to be critiqued by people. You
Right.
must learn what you can do and do it great. You cannot ever say, that song sucks. Oh, Silverhead was terrible. All of these things. I don't care who you are, what band you're in, you're going to get negated by people who are jealous or whatever reasons they have. So none of that all bounces off me.
Right.
It never scared me.
Michael, before we delve into the acting part of your career, I did wonder, I've read a lot of, as you'd imagine, as a rock fan, as a metalhead, you read a lot of memoirs, biographies, and so on. And I
Yeah.
remember the first time I had heard of the boarding school thing, not that I didn't know what it was, but about it being a kind of it feels like a major part of culture in England was Mick Fleetwood's book. And then I felt like I hit it again with Bruce Dickinson. And it just seems to be very repetitive part of somebody's life. Is there something in British culture, or maybe when you were growing up, where do boys typically end up in boarding school? Or it just seems like it was very common, and not all of these people were like upper class, which is what I associate boarding school.
No, the elitism. If your parents had money, you'd be in
Mhm.
these upper class schools. It wasn't for everybody. It was for the
Yeah.
rich. And because my father had left money to me that he didn't get, you know, he was in jail. The solicitors took care of me,
Got you.
and but it's a very high thing. Those schools were for the upper class, you know.
Dang.
And not everybody could go in there. Mick Fleetwood, I think, came from a wealthy family. I'm not sure, but all of that, nothing occurred to me that I even needed to understand. I just went along like
Right.
the ocean coming up on the beach. It was just nature, and I'm not aware of any other way of living.
Yeah. So you went to drama school. Was that challenging for you? Like, did you need to find money, get a loan or something? Or did you audition and they pulled you in because they saw something?
The latter,
Okay.
yes. Because I was at the theater and I was in the thing, and after the thing, we'd be cleaning up, and I was 16. A woman called Hazel Malone came over to me and said, you've got a good look. You have a nice look. You
Mhm.
have cheekbones. And in our business, cheekbones are terribly important. She was like, she said, I'd like you to come to my drama school because I think you have a mystique. I said, what? And she said, come and see me. I said, when? Now? And she said, no, not now, but, but as soon as you can. And I went there and she put me in there and I didn't have to pay for anything.
That's wonderful.
But what I did do, I was living in one room with three guys, two other guys putting out Shakespearean feathers of ink, and it was crazy. But within 2 or 3 weeks, I was in Pinewood with Sidney Poitier and Sean Connery doing James Bond in the next fucking studio.
Right.
So it changed, my life changed like that. It
Now
was so fast.
there was a moment from your younger life, and I don't know if it was pre-boarding school or during, that you did a candy commercial as a
Yeah.
child, and you tasted the honey.
Yes. Well, what happened was I'm in the school. A parents of a kid that really liked me, this young guy, really liked baby. We were babies, and he said, "My father's a producer of commercials, and I wonder, since you have this fabulous face, it could be the bones,
The
and
bones.
why don't you get hold of my father?" They shipped me off to do that, and it's a Nuxbar kid. I became a Nuxbar kid. And there was
Nice.
big posters of me within this and this thing going down, and then looking, and I was terrified. But it was a Knoxville was a confectionery, a sweet for kids. And then they
Nice.
hurled me back into the school. Can you imagine?
That's how old were you?
11?
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Did you get
11.
recognized on the streets when you were allowed on the streets, out and about?
Oh, yeah, but only for 20 minutes. I mean, things change, But the funny thing about England is it sticks in the English head, so, they like that. And there was only, a couple of channels. And, this is way back before you guys out there were born,
Like
probably.
a million channels now,
But,
yeah.
but it was so funny.
So you had this early taste of what it was like to be in a commercial as a young child. You got to be this iconic movie, which I'm sure eventually you figured out ended up being really huge and iconic, that year. And then did the jobs come like, did they start coming like quickly after that, or did you have to
Oh,
stick
yeah.
with it?
Well, yes. What happened after To Sail with Love was I went onto the stage, in the West End of London, and I played a girl, and it was brilliant. It was a four-piece, and what happened was it was about a mother and father, and the son brings his fiance home, and the fiance was me,
Ah.
and I was 18, and so suddenly I had to get into that mood of being a fiance. And it was a huge hit, not Beyonce, fiance. And it was such a fantastic hit that Andrew Lloyd Webber came to see me in another show where we were naked. It was called The Dirtiest Show in Town. And it was
Mhm.
an American show, theater. and Andrew Lloyd Webber came to see the show, and then um, got hold of my agent and said, "I want to meet this guy." And I ended up singing demos for Jesus Christ Superstar, and that's what happened to the rock and roll. That's how that happened.
Got
Do you
you.
imagine that?
I so I can't. Your entire life to me is like the script that you would write for the fantasy movie that you want to watch when you want to escape and everything that
Yeah,
happens,
crazy.
if somebody's in their career. Michael, you've at this point, you have been in at least 100 different television shows and roles,
Oh
and
yeah,
I believe at least 30 movies. I'm going to rattle off a couple of them for you. That these are the ones that stuck out to me because they were shows that I either watched or was very familiar with. MacGyver,
yeah,
which was kind of one of the ultimate shows for my I'm a child of the 80s, so MacGyver
yeah,
still talk about MacGyvering things, right?
yeah,
This
yeah.
day. So you were Murdoc, and then you were, I guess I didn't get to see it, but because I definitely watched MacGyver, but in the reboot you had a part playing your former character's mentor, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
David Dasmalchian took over the Murdoc role, who I love. I love him. He's a fantastic actor. But to be in, Murdoch and MacGyver, and I was nominated for many, and it was fantastic because I just turned into this.
Mm.
All I wanted to do was kill him.
That's all he wanted. It was a very simple
That
goal.
was my job. And I would do it, and I would try to do it, and I never do it. And so I was always like this, you know, I have to do this. It was fantastic character because he
Uh-huh.
never, and he was a brilliant guy, a murderer, an assassin, all of those things. And I thought that was extremely romantic. and, and people dug it, they really did. And they still do. This is the thing about telly. I've been doing it for what, 40, 50 years? And I've done 120 TV shows, and usually playing villains, horrible because of the bones in the English, and you know, and that's a beautiful thing because I still get kids, young kids,
Mm.
sending me stuff, going, because there's something romantic about villains.
There is. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
lover and the hero is great, but the evilness of it and the demonic vibe is more interesting. And it empowers you when you just have a singular thing. That's what you do. You kill people. I mean, it was, and which went against my Krishnamurti rituals a lot. Philosophy and kindness and all that. But it was a great thing to be able to do, to work as hard as that was. But this is also, I'm in bands at the same time.
Right. A few other shows. You were on the new WKRP in Cincinnati. You played Leon's boyfriend on Roseanne. Let's see. I actually watched your Frasier episode last night. That was a
Oh
really
yeah, yeah, yeah. That
love
was
that one.
good. Oh, I loved him.
NCIS and Just Shoot Me. And I think for me, I think your Just Shoot Me for some reason was the most memorable, just maybe because I just love that show and that.
Yeah, it was a
But
great show, great cast, phenomenal cast. And I had that leopard skin shirt, as I recall,
yes.
which I have to this day.
You
But
ever bust it out, or is it more of a keepsake?
no, it's an archival
Okay.
costume.
I love it.
But it reminds me of it because I love clothes. I mean, I love that. Black, 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 like you, black,
Of
black.
course. My entire
My,
closet's black. I have like three
me
things that
too.
aren't.
Totally. Absolutely. Me, I have to go through it going, which, what the fuck, trying to find the right jacket. But
I know. That's the only problem with black is sometimes, especially once you acquire a nice collection, you kind of forget some of what you have
yes, big,
because you really
absolutely.
have to like revisit everything
Oh,
somewhat
oh,
regularly.
I go into the wardrobe with a flashlight, going,
Yeah.
trying to figure out which black jacket, But I'm so goddamn busy, 3 hours a day for Stevie Van Zandt, 3 hours of writing the shows,
Right. Prepping the pre-production and all that.
Oh, yeah, because I've been doing it for 11 years. And when you're singing about Sam and Dave, you're talking about Sam and Dave, or whatever, whoever the artists are, that Stevie, really adores, then you've got to find things about that, about those artists, and find interesting stories about them. And also, the other thing about that, very quickly, is it did negate and take away a lot of my own sense of uh, stardom. I started to realize, wow, I just want to be inspired by people, by something other than myself. The egoicness of show business can kill you. So when I did that, and I always was very aware of other bands, and I would always cheer them on, and you know and that's terribly important. You
Mhm.
can't just think about yourself constantly. You have to want other people to succeed if you
Right.
want to succeed.
I imagine though there's a difference between being in a band, like a regular band, and rooting for your friends, or you see a band, you're like, they're great, we'll come up together. And being a DJ where you're really celebrating other people because you're
Yeah.
the host, people are tuning in because they like you and what you have to say and the way you present it and the choices you make. But you're also really your job is to showcase the musicians, their
Yes.
stories, their music. And so I do think I imagine it's still a little bit different, right? Because now you're not necessarily as a DJ, I don't imagine you're putting yourself sort of in that race,
Yeah.
so to speak, right?
It's the best thing that ever happened to me, was to adore other people's work,
Mm,
and admire and all of that. I mean, I think Chalamet has it sussed, because did you meet Bob Dylan? No. Do you want him? No. That's really what I do. I listen to this music. I love it. And I think what it does is it gives it you become a fan,
mm, mhm.
and that I never thought I'd be. I was my biggest fan, but then I learned. Wait a minute, no, no, no. And on a spiritual sense, and I know you guys can understand what I'm talking about, because it really taught me a lot about cut the ego, forget that, and love this music. And I did. And as a result of that, I wanted to write better songs, and I wrote even more songs that
Right.
have been recorded by many, many people. And that's a good thing. It's a lesson that I'm bringing them of 3 hours of rock and roll music, why they did it, where they did it, you know, their marriages, their prison sentences, I'll go all deep.
All of it. Yeah. What
Sirius
are
XM, Channel 21.
Yep, and we'll post all of that below this video as well so they can find it if they don't already know about it. What is your level of scripting when you're planning out your shows? Because it is conversational. You want to feel like, the audience wants to feel like they're talking to you even though they're listening to you. But how deep do you get with your scripting? Are you more of somebody that just plans songs and makes some bullet notes, or do you kind of like finesse some of the language before you get on the air?
Certainly. Um, Boy, you are so fucking smart. This is really
Oh.
cool. But yeah, I do. I'm especially very much aware of lyricism, who wrote it and why, and I'll get into that. But when you're dealing with Sam and Dave and Aretha and all of that R&B stuff, I you got to go deep, because I have to know about Sonny Boy Williamson, where he was born, Montgomery, Alabama. All of these things make the music more available to you. If you know what he's been through, which I do, and Robert Johnson and all of the great bluesmen and R&B and Sly Stone's life, and all, if I talk about them and what happened to them as much as I talk about how great the song is, um, it's more important to know about the artist, really, because then you'll understand the song better, especially people who are great. But then again, you've got all of the Stax and Motown people that didn't really write it, except for Smokey Robinson, and
Mhm.
Arthur Alexander and all these great writers and singers. So it's a really interesting historical view of American and English rock and roll music. And why did Ronnie Wood, at 14 years old, want to play the blues? Why? So I find out why. That a working class kid, which is, the Stones and all of them, the Beatles, I mean, they're all, except for Jagger, who was middle class. And, you learn stuff that they don't teach in schools.
Mm,
because the blues is so real and so harsh and so romantic, and you're not going to get that in the working class world of London, or Chicago.
mm.
Yeah.
Michael, do you ever, I think all of us, whether we have a show or not, we go down these rabbit holes, right? You get into a band and you want to learn everything. And do you ever find yourself getting frustrated? Because sometimes I go down these rabbit holes and I think I know something because I grew up with it. I grew up with a certain band and I find out that what I thought had always been true wasn't. And now I'm not sure. And now I don't know where the truth is in the writing and the history because there are a lot of stories in rock and roll and there are a lot of miscredits of who wrote what, especially in like
Yes.
do you ever find yourself just getting stuck or frustrated or do you feel that at this point in your life, you have enough knowledge that you know where to go to find the real answer?
Well, both. I mean, I know everything, that most people, would die to know. But at the same time, you can always find out something about them that you haven't, quite accessed. I mean, I always look at those. If you're looking at, take for instance, Holland Dozier Holland,
Mhm.
Tamla Motown writers, you think, well, was that a factory? Is Marvin Gaye, is Smokey Robinson, are they just making up a movie? I mean, how true is this? Well, the truth of the matter is, if you're a great songwriter, you have been through those dreadful things of love, you know, the melancholy side of love, or the joy of romanticism. And I think if you're going to write songs like that, you've got to reach people's hearts. So that's the truth. So you're
Mm,
writing the truth. You're singing the truth. Those horns, the tone of that saxophone in the solo, it's emotionality.
mm,
It's hard to describe art. If I stand and look at the paintings that I love, like him, but I have many, but you look at it, you fall into it. You become part of it. So if you can do that on the radio and try and make that song a friend or somebody that'll teach you, philosophical rock and roll music is hard to come by. I mean, Jagger is a great lyricist, simply put, apart from being this extraordinary, star-studded guy, and Keith, and they're doing it because they love it. And you can tell the people that love it, and people learn from that, and that's big.
just to circle back a little bit, there was a quote of yours that said that you didn't want to be an actor, you wanted to be a star. Did this propel you to spend maybe more time in music? Did you feel like you got more out of being on stage with a live audience than, let's say, recording a television show or that? Or was it just about being a star overall?
It was bullshit.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun to say that.
Yeah.
People can go, "Oh, that's disgusting." He's not. Wait, it's in music. Isn't music? That's what you want. You want to play great
Yeah.
music for the people. you know. So I just said that to some schmuck, and
Okay.
some magazine. I didn't give a,
Got you.
you know, uh, that was a joke. I mean, listen, I'm working 15 hours a day on a mountain holding a machine gun while Richard Dean Anderson is having a cup of coffee in his coach. Okay.
That's
That's
amazing.
stardom for you. Stardom is ridiculous. We're all stars. I mean, plus, I really wanted to make fun of show business. I've always done that, because they're so self satisfied. I'm just a working guy that happened to be, could sing and play guitar and knew a lot about guns. I really know how to work weapons, and believe it or not. And stardom, I could give a shit about. I never really thought that way because I felt I was, people would go, oh, you know, and in the streets, and I still get it because of the MacGyver is still on television.
Yes, it is. Yep. I think it has its own channel.
So you get middle-aged guys going, when I was a kid, and I really loved seeing you like kill people. I said, oh my God, thank you. Run away.
Michael, when you started really your career as an artist, whether it's musician or actor, was there any point where you felt a sense of satisfaction of like, okay, I have that safety, I have that camaraderie, I'm understood, all those things that you might have wanted as a small child, or were you always chasing after that? Or
The,
maybe neither, or maybe neither.
the latter,
The
you know,
latter.
yeah, because the thing about it is that it's hard. It's hard work. It's very hard work. You got to learn those lines. You're in a, in a coach somewhere in Atlanta, and you got to go out there and be fantastic, and remember your lines, and know where the light is, all the tricks, and that's work.
Mhm.
So you are definitely, I was very nervous in the beginning of going out there on a stage set, especially with Sidney Poitier in my face,
Yeah.
and so, but I learned very early on that stardom is nonsense. And what's the most important is that you're good at what you do. And Sidney Poitier had more of an effect on me than any other person has ever been, except for maybe Keith Richards, who I really believe in, as he believes in what he's doing so hardcore. And Sidney was like that. And one day, I think it was the third day of filming, we did a scene where Sidney had to come into the classroom and sit there and say something to us. So we did 2 or 3 takes, and then, okay, let's go for a fourth. And Sydney goes out, and they go action, and Sean Connery walks in instead as a
Oh.
joke, and
But
everybody
were you
laughed.
all like,
We
what's
were
going
all shattered. I mean, we all went, "Oh, seven is in the house." And I suddenly thought, have fun. If these guys, these iconic superstars can do that and have fun with it, that's so important. Enjoy it. But it's also tremendously important to try and get that out of you, the tension. And oh, I'm going to forget this, and I don't know. Like if you watch Gene Hackman, God rest his soul, he's not acting.
on?
The great actors never acted; they just were. Jimmy Dean, all the great actors, and that's where I wanted to get. I wanted to get to a place where I wasn't scared, and I wasn't cocky. I was just absolutely wanted to get into the flesh and blood of that person I was playing.
What is your process? And in listening to you talk about it, like you're talking about how you want to get to this place, that these great actors were early in your career, and you did go to drama school. What is your process, and how to build this character before you present it to your director or your producer? And I also wonder, is it the same process you go through before you go on stage as a musician? Like, is
Well,
the training
it's a great
process?
question, as usual. It's a great question, but there's different vibes of it. In rock and roll, there is, I don't think, you don't think about rock and roll. You go out and feel rock and roll. But when you're playing comedically, there's rhythms. If you really want to be funny, and I've done Roseanne's show, I've done Frasier, I've 30 different sitcoms, and I was in the cast of several of those seasons of work. It's rhythmic, funny. If you're playing a killer, then I did what I did for you earlier, which is just you're nothing. You're so inhuman,
Mhm.
and that's the way I would play killers. Is there was no, I'd kill them, and there's no like, ha, ha, it was real. I'd feel real. I'd have to come down after I've done all of that and go
Do you
back to the couch and sit there and go, whew.
like really shake it off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you really want it to be real, I summoned up all the thing because I went through a vibe of like when the parents and I didn't have them and all of that, and that hurt me, and then I go there and I think about pain and all of that, and it really worked, because most of those people who are criminals don't have a soul anymore,
Mhm,
and that's the way you play them.
mhm.
And that's why I was always playing bad guys, because I had that inside me, and I got rid of it by doing that. If you can, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
I wonder, with, let's say, maybe your more positive characters, the funnier, more charming ones, did you ever have a character that you're like, I miss playing that guy? Like I kind of wish I could be him again. And I don't necessarily mean like go to the set and recreate that character. I just mean, do you just miss that person that you created? No?
I don't miss anything.
No.
No, I keep doing it.
Mhm.
And well, what's happened is my idea of art has changed a lot because I'm 77 years old and I've been doing it for 60, 65, however many years, and there comes a time where I don't want to get up at 4 in the morning and go and get into costume or have my face all, because I did a lot of horror shit too. It was and I don't want to do that, so I started to paint, you
Mhm.
know and that's a solitary gig, and I love it. you know um there's only so much you can give as an actor you know
Are there any roles that you would like to do that you never felt like you
no,
no, nothing like that?
no, no, I don't want to go back and play anything. I don't want to do it. It's for youngins, and I don't want to go into there and work for 15 hours and stuff like that, and I don't have to do any of that. So no, I don't look back and go, oh, I wish I was no, I'm really happy with where I am.
So
And
right now you have your radio show and your art. Tell me about your art and when did you start painting?
well, I've always seen, life as a painting in a way. you know, the interesting parts, the difficult parts, the loving parts, the romantic parts, the sexy parts, all of that. But if I throw it into, because it's very cubist what I'm doing. If I hate titles of, well, my painting is sort of Renoir meets, Toulouse-Lautrec. It's I got all this paint and I go crazy, with it. And I think that's why what it does is it makes me feel unique and getting to unique places, unique images that I've never seen before. And that really stirs me up because I'm learning all the time. And if you're learning all the time and you don't profess to know what you're doing, I think that's a really good place to be. I mean, acting, I did so much of it. And painting is a beautiful solitary experience. It's almost like meditating. And I enjoy it tremendously because there's no directors to call cut. I can go, and my wife is so, great about it, because in the middle of the night I'll get up and go up, but if it hits me what I want to do. So, and that's, I think what I'm trying to say is working on my own has been very satisfying and not have people tell me, Michael, maybe if you move the gun 2 feet to,
Right, right.
nobody's telling me what to do.
Yeah, this is all you.
Yeah.
This is all you. One thing I noticed, because I do follow you on social media, is that you will share your paintings with us and you
Mhm.
will ask us what we think it is and
Yes.
whatever. What does that do for you? Is that an important part of the process? Do you
Oh,
do
yeah.
often or just, just every now and then with certain paintings?
Um, yes, the latter. I do like to know because I'm new to it myself. So
Mhm.
therefore, if they say, "Well," I mean, have you read what people say?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's crazy, like in a
she's
beautiful way.
clearly having sex with a donkey. That's very clear. You know, and I'm going, what? you know, but also the majority of it is really smart.
Yeah.
There's some people are dying and waiting to sell you something that they've discovered. So if I show them these images and they think it's it's my mother and she's furious at my father, it's nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but who cares, right?
Right.
So and then they go and they write, and they have a title for it. So just give me a title for each image, and it's so beautiful. How great is that? I mean, whether they like it or not, and they seem to like it, but there's so many different descriptions. Like one person say, "Oh, that's so loving," and the other person say, "Oh, that's murderous. That's disgraceful."
It is the comments are great.
Oh, yeah, I've collected them all.
Yeah, you should. Oh, I'm glad.
I've collected them all, and when I write, I'm going to put out a book of my paintings with all of these different interpretations of what those images are. That's going to be my
I
book,
love it.
because then you're bringing people into excuse me, what art is. I'm giving them an opportunity to tell me, well, how would you describe that then? And these are people that work and do their jobs, and they're as brilliant as anybody. They just their life path was perhaps not as adventurous as mine, but it gives them an opportunity to be creative.
So how long have you been, like, dedicating yourself to painting where you spend real time on it?
I say about a year and a half.
Oh, okay, so this is really a newer passion that you've really dedicated time to, and I believe you're having a gallery showing of your
Yeah,
art? When
I'm
is
I'm,
that?
I'm going to play too. It's going to be great. But acoustic with some very interesting musicians. But essentially, I'm going to have an exhibition of it. Yeah,
That's
I have
and
over 600 paintings.
do you really? Oh, wow. Do you do, like, a painting a day, or do you just take
Two
as
or three a day.
Oh, okay.
I do the show. I'm up at dawn. I do the show, and I write it out, and then I record it, and it's pre-recorded a week ahead.
Mhm.
And after that's done, and I'm happy with it, 6 hours, three, 3 hours of actually doing it, and 3 hours of creating what I'm going to say, and who wrote it, and who all of the directors and producers and all of that, and what studio and what kind of tone it has, and then I'd sit down and paint and do something completely different and splash the paint around and then try and make sense of it all. And I never make sense of it all, but I'll get the it's a great thing to do, on your own,
Mm.
you know, and nobody telling you to do it again.
Right, right, and how to do it again.
That's right.
All right, Michael. Well, one thing we haven't spent enough time on is your newest album, which is getting a wonderful reception. Tell me a little bit about the new album.
Well, you know, I suddenly thought of I'm so tired of not hearing rock and roll.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, I could do one of two things. I could go off and write 12 early 70s rock and roll songs, or I could reinterpret David Bowie,
Mhm.
T Rex, Roxy Music, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, Alice Cooper, Slade, Mud, Sweet. These songs are fucking amazing, you
Yeah.
know? And I said, how can I do that? I'll tell you exactly how I can do it. Guitar, bass, drums, and a singer, not even a tambourine. And we'd
Yeah.
do it in a couple of takes. And then I'd go home and listen to it and think, great. And then I'd go and, but Chris Wanzer, co-producer, brilliant. And band, incredible. Iggy's guitar player, Eric Skermerhorn, um, David Goodstein on drums, who's Linda Perry's drummer for all of the work that she does. And she's a whole other genius, And the bass player is just a beautiful bass player. And when we first got into it, they're used to playing, huge hits. So they loved going back into the past, the early 70s, which to me was like God, the early 70s. And that's what I really sort of wanted to reproduce. And I did. And it's tremendously successful on an indie level. It's only on Spotify and Amazon Prime. It never came out in vinyl.
Mhm.
But guess what I'm going to do?
You're
I'm
gonna
going
get
to
their vinyl.
I'm going to do the 80s, babe.
I love it.
I'm going to do the 80s in exactly the same way because these songs are amazing.
They
And people
are. It's quite
forget
the list.
now it's rap. It's one chord. It's one chord. And the charm of that is the intelligence and brilliance of rap, which I love how clever that is. But I want to go back to the days of guitar, bass, and drums
Right.
and no tambourines, nothing. And by the way, when I first started, there was no teleprompters.
Mhm.
Can you imagine? But now Axel is going, you know, and reading it, all of them, whoever they are, they're so whacked out billionaires and they can't remember their lyrics, you know, and they're just stuffed with romance and superstardom. When I first started, whew, there was so many great bands, Chrissy Hind, you know, so much going on, especially in the early 70s, Iggy. And that's when I came to America, was in 71, met Miss Pamela and all the rest of it, and played in Atlanta, and collectively Silverhead weighed 160 pounds. And we'd do the gigs and come out in the parking lot, and there'd be all these tough guys with the girls behind them going, you know, and they would come at us, and those five guys were hardcore guys from London, working class. They would beat the shit out of these big footballers, and those girls would jump in the coach, and we'd go back to the hotel and play chess, obviously.
I love it. Oh, so tell me one thing about this album. How hard was it to get this list down to, I think it ended up being 12 songs.
Easy.
It was
I
easy.
did it. I've done them all. 50s, 60s,
Okay.
70s, 80s. I've done them all. And I did it, you know, and I did some research on other you know, eras, and I've got it all done. All five decades of music I intend to do.
So you just made your list, like these were the favorites, the ones you loved. You just
Yeah,
said this is gonna be it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're good.
And the 50s thing is fantastic. It's Jerry Lee, it's Chuck, it's Little Richard, it's Eddie Cochran, you know, it's really rocking, you know. I mean, all of them are rocking songs. And I'll do the 80s next though, because
Can you give me, I'm a 80s child, so can you give me a couple 80s that you think you might do?
it's Axel, it's the 80s rock and roll bands, you know, but it's a great list. And when you what is so exciting about it is they're so overproduced.
Mhm.
I'd much rather go see them live than listen to the records, because Slash is so interpretive, you know. So there's some incredible 80s songs that we're going to do that are, but simplify it.
Uh-huh.
Because my whole view of making records today, it's the producer. The producer's the star. But if you get guys that just love the tone and feel of an instrument in your hands, it's like it's the difference between masturbating and having sex with a partner. How about that?
There you go.
And I would rather have the latter than the former.
Oh, there you
And you
go.
can quote me, my love, if you like, or
And
you can take it out of your
we're
show.
gonna be quoting you for years to come on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
All of those, there's some great music being made then, you know. And then plus 80s, I'm in 1985, I'm at Live Aid, I'm suddenly I'm with Duran Duran, you know, the power station. I mean, that was so fantastic, because there's Bob Dylan here, Tina Turner over here, Jagger here. I've been rehearsing for 2 days, 32 songs, and Live Aid.
no teleprompter.
Yeah, no teleprompter.
That's right.
And that was the, you know, that was the 1985.
Yeah.
And that was under 2 days. I had 2 or 3 days to rehearse all of those songs. Robert Palmer, I'd known for years and loved him, you know, and he was the initial singer in the Power Station with
Right.
John and Andy. And Andy is just a true rock and roll guitar player, amazing character, wonderful, wonderful rock and roll person, tiny. It was like Frodo, you know, Taylor. You
Yeah.
know,
I find a lot of the rock and rollers are tiny, like,
tiny, especially the
well,
Brits.
and well, even the women too, like Pat Benatar and Stevie Nicks. I've never actually met Stevie Nicks, but I hear she's tiny, and I know Pat Benatar is tiny, but they're bigger than life when they're on stage. So it's so shocking when you're near them and you go, "Wow."
And Gaga too,
Oh, really? She's tiny too?
tiny.
Tiny.
But because she's so brilliant, in my view, that she's, you know, she
I
could be,
imagine her being quite tall, actually.
yeah, all of those, they have power. You
Yeah,
know, it's so hard to describe how good people are, but how they're be good. You know, what is it? It's because they're so committed,
right.
you know, and they're not posturing. It's, you know, who struck me as being very interesting was Tom Jones. he was the most confident guy. And Elvis, they both knew each other in Vegas. It's a great, I would think, a great movie of Tom Jones and Elvis in a movie, but they just naturally enjoyed it. And that's beautiful. Look at Mick Jagger. Why do we like him? Why do we love him? Because he loves himself. And that's hard to do. People think it's egoic, but it isn't. If you believe in yourself, then you'll be able to entertain people.
Michael, I had one last question for you for today anyway. And you did a Christmas song in your career called Rock and Roll Santa, and I think it was about 2012. What inspired that? Was that something you wanted to do? Was that something you were asked to do that was an opportunity?
Children's food.
Hmm.
If you listen to the song, it's about me telling you what to eat. Santa got slim. Santa lost weight. That's all of the lines, and that's lyrics in the thing. But it looks like a little Christmas song. But when you listen to it, it's about eat right, move your body, And I thought, if that's not a gift, a Christmas gift, I don't know what is. Because America, shall we say, fast food, poison, obviously. And I thought, I'm going to write a Christmas song. Father, lost weight. Father's great. Father Christmas. It's all little kids, and little kids went crazy. And every Christmas, I get from the mom and dad going, "It's great because they're just eating vegetables." And thank you so much. I mean,
Oh, that's so sweet.
is that like beyond belief? I
Yeah.
mean, can you imagine me getting all of these notes from mom and dad? I mean, it brings tears to my eyes and saying, "Yeah, little Derek, he's really into sort of broccoli." And I go, "Oh,
Incredible.
yeah,
I
incredible."
love it.
And
Yeah.
that's the power of rock and roll, isn't it? But you've
What
got to
why
be
a
clever.
Christmas song though, Michael? Why is a Christmas song? Is it because you knew it would have appeal?
I never had one.
Because you never had one. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
never had Christmas with my parents.
uh
No. And but that's a whole other story. But I mean, I thought that's what I'll do. I'll write a Christmas song that will make them, vegans, and that's cool. That would be my gift to the parents and to the children and to their bodies. And I don't eat meat. I'm not going to eat an animal. Animals are way more interesting than humans. You
So it's
know.
a political statement in addition to everything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an important thing, and I think some people understood what I was trying to do, and some people didn't listen. So
Mhm.
they thought, "Oh, he's just doing a carol," and uh, and that's okay. I could care less. If a few people get it, that's great. I got it. We had fun doing it, and there's a lot of like big rock and roll stars that were on that studio, that recording.
Who joined you on that?
Not going to tell you.
Ah, oh, it's a secret.
Yeah. Because
Something
they have like they're like they're very tough rock and roll,
got you.
back, and they would be upset.
So, Michael, you have a lot going on. You're doing your paintings, and eventually you're going to do your show, a gallery show. And it
Yes.
sounds like you have a book in mind as well. Obviously, the new album is out. It's doing really well, getting a lot of love. Are you going to be touring or doing some shows for that?
I doubt it. I mean, maybe I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I know that this record that we did, the '70s thing. What I'm going to do though is, you might be interested in this. In a month or so, maybe 2 months, Little Steven created a cruise. We're going on a
Oh,
big boat with all of the DJs there, and Social Distortion, X, so many great bands, and I'm the MC of that.
oh,
You
wow.
know, and it's going to be a fantastic journey. You can look it up, and I'll tell you about it. But it's going to be something else. There's all these incredible musicians in 3 days, and going to the Bahamas. Hello,
Have you done one of these music cruises before? Is this your first?
No, no, no. No, I don't like boats. I can't swim. But but I think it'll be really fun. It'd be really fun.
That's
I'm so
amazing.
sorry I can't get the 80s for you. The 80s.
You found it.
Okay, one, Back in Black. Two, Start Me Up.
Oh,
You start me up, right?
yes.
Welcome to the jungle. Ace of Spades. Ace of Spades. Yeah.
There you go.
Rebel Yell from Billy. Should I Stay or Should I Go?
Okay.
Born in the USA. Crazy Train. Cult of Personality. When Doves Cry.
Mhm.
I Love Rock and Roll. And Every Breath You Take.
That is a killer lineup of
You
songs.
imagine that?
I love that.
Won't that be fun?
I think that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And Mercuriadis is helping me, put it all together. He's a phenomenal guy and a brilliant guy. And, he bought Queen's money. He's a very, the Queen's music, they sold all this.
Catalog.
And
Yeah.
he's the guy. But he loved Silverhead, my first band, when he was 13. And I got hold of him and I said, listen, I want to bring rock and roll back a bit. It's my version of it, and those are the songs I'm going to do. Can you imagine? Rebel Yell, in Black, Crazy Train, Cult of Personality.
Cult of Personality might be my favorite on that list.
It's just an incredible song that I think has disappeared, And When Doves Cry, but I'm going to do it with guitar, bass, and drums. You imagine that Prince song with guitar, bass, and drums? It's going to really be good. I Love Rock and Roll, which is maybe what I should call it.
I think so.
You think so? Because I've got it.
I think so. I think that makes sense because these are all your love letters to music.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first one was, It's Only Rock and Roll was the first album that I put out of the 70s. And now if I put out I Love Rock and Roll, I think people would like that.
I vote for that. I definitely vote.
I love rock and roll. In the jukebox, baby, right? That's that one. It'd be so fun. I'm so glad I found it.
I am too. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We got a major sneak peek on something that it hasn't even, I don't think you've even started recording yet.
No. I've done them all. I've got it all for those 5 decades, but I'm going to be careful. I want to be the right peeps and do it. It's going to be fun. I'm going to do it with the same band. I'm really busy on other things. I'm setting it up. This one, I don't want to, because the 70s one is still out there.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
They constantly all over the world. Indie. It's indie. It's not, a big hit, but it is for me. I don't need a big hit. I just want to get songs out that are cool, and so we never forget. Yep. There's different versions, and it's almost an homage to these artists. They deserve it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I encourage anybody who hasn't heard the first of all these albums yet to go out and find them. Definitely check out your radio show, which can you clarify for me? Is it 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time?
Yes.
And then a replay 9
It
p.m.
replays on the West Coast from 9 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, the whole week. And it's a 3-hour show. And it's the best radio station, I think, of rock and roll and soul and R&B music. Stevie Van Zandt created it 20 years ago. And he is the messiah of keeping these, like I am, keeping these things alive. Because God knows where it'll go, because of AI and all of this crap. I want humans. I don't want to dance to a robot or with a robot. Well, maybe I do. but not this week. But so you guys want to listen to the radio, I'd love that, and write to me, and I try and keep that going with a relationship that was not just me on some pedestal talking about rock and roll music. I'm as big a fan as you are. You know,
Yeah.
that's
So
just
we've got album, we've got the radio show, we've got the art, the with the gallery showing and the book coming up, and the cruise.
yeah.
Anything else going on here that we should know about? You're quite quick. You're
Well,
quick.
I'm running for president,
Oh,
and
of course.
so we'll see
But you
what
got
happens.
4 years. You got 4 years to do that.
No,
So,
no, no. I have a secret plan.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But oh, really? You're kidding? But yeah, I try and keep moving.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I will share everything down below on how to find you and all your various projects. And I really hope to see you again very soon, maybe when you put out that 80s album or one of the others.
Oh, sure. I'd be delighted to talk with you. It's been an absolutely wonderful interview, and I'm very happy. And now I'm going to go for a run.
Oh, I love it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Michael Debar, and make sure you are subscribed to MetalNet TV and that you hit that notification bell so that you are alerted to every other video. And before you go, don't forget to leave a nice comment for me or Michael.